Why JavaScript is actually terrible and there are no upsides. There's only the superficial appearance of an upside. Why, on the surface, one of the merits of the language that it describes itself as JavaScript, for web development, is that its one saving grace is that it can do anything, albeit many things inefficiently. If you bend it and pry it, it can literally go anywhere and do anything, which appeals to a sort of developer who grew up in sorry, typo. With the flow of my process, I'm trying to fix that. An era. I gotta fix this because I'm reading from a script. Not ear. Era. Where if you grew up in an era where if you made software compatible with one operating system, well, now ported it over. To port it over, you have to write it to detect which operating system is used at startup, or simply release separate editions for every individual operating systems. Coders and developers looked at that and thought, gee, if I develop it inside the browser, every operating system has a browser. These browsers work pretty much more or less not roughly the same, regardless of which operating system the user happens to find themselves on. If I develop it inside the browser, it will run on every operating system and and every operating roughly in an equivalent fashion, regardless of which distribution the user actually uses and accesses the website with, or with which operating system. Except in practice, no replication of effort is actually ever spared a developer. The reality of modern web development is every individual framework is now being constantly updated and refined in a fashion that isn't backwards compatible. After all, the mentality is move fast and break things. When they talk about breaking things, they pretty much mean old, JavaScript frameworks that a whole huge number of people are absolutely dependent upon, which means a web developer is forced to rewrite their code every time a dependency their code is used to rely on is changed in a way that breaks their code. In other words, they thought they could save themselves effort since JavaScript executes in a relatively uniform way, regardless of which platform it is used on. And yet, in practice, no replication of effort is ever spared the developer. Either they write their code with a real programming language like Rust and deliver packages for every individual operating system running the same software 4 or 5 times, or they write it in JavaScript and are forced to update it every couple of weeks to keep up with all the new frameworks and custom crap that JavaScript keeps vomiting onto the world on a constant basis. No, a replication of effort was actually eliminated by designing things in this fashion. There is no way out of the burnout hell. You're doing exactly the same amount of work that you did in the old days, when you had to write your code 4 or 5 different times, releasing individual versions for every different operating system. Sorry, that's the world we still live in. It's just happening in a different way.